Vincent Moretti had built his empire on reading people. 52 years of life, 35 of them in a world where misreading someone's character could get you killed, had taught him that true nature revealed itself not in boardrooms or negotiations, but in how you treated someone who couldn't help or hurt you. That's why he stood in the bathroom of a luxury penthouse at 10 o'clock on a Thursday night, applying theatrical makeup that added 23 years and a lifetime of hardship to his face. His security chief, Marco, watched from the doorway with barely concealed concern. They'd worked together for 15 years, and Marco had seen Vincent do dangerous things, walk into meetings with armed rivals, negotiate with men who'd killed for less than what was at stake, survive 3 attempts on his life. But this bothered Marco more than any of those moments. "You don't have to do this yourself," Marco said, not for the first time that evening. "We could send someone, an actor, someone expendable." "No." Vincent studied his reflection as he applied prosthetic wrinkles around his eyes, each one deepening the illusion of age and exhaustion. The expensive Tom Ford suit was gone, replaced with clothes he'd purchased from a thrift store that afternoon. A threadbare overcoat that smelled of mothballs and rain, pants with frayed cuffs, shoes held together with duct tape. "I need to feel it, need to see their eyes when they decide I don't matter." He was considering a $340 million acquisition of the Grandeur Hotel chain. The flagship property alone was worth $80 million, and the numbers were impressive. Occupancy rates in the high 90s, revenue climbing steadily, a waiting list for their luxury suites. The senior receptionist, Clarissa Vaughn, had been with them for 6 years, consistently received positive reviews, and seemed to run the front desk with military efficiency. But Vincent had learned long ago that financial success didn't equal human decency, and he refused to enrich anyone who lacked the most basic quality he valued: compassion for those who had nothing. "The cameras?" he asked, applying liver spots to the backs of his hands with practiced precision. "Positioned. 3 angles. Lobby plants, security camera we replaced, and the button camera on Davis posing as a guest. Audio's crystal clear." Marco handed him a small device disguised as a coat button. "Panic signal if you need extraction. 1 press, we're there in 30 seconds. Vincent pocketed it, knowing he wouldn't use it. He'd survived worse than a hotel receptionist's cruelty. He straightened, feeling the weight of the disguise, the vulnerability it created. His hands trembled slightly, partly from the mild muscle relaxants he'd taken to make the shaking authentic, partly from something deeper. Memory, perhaps, or anticipation of what he was about to experience. "Why this one?" Marco asked quietly. "We've investigated a dozen properties. You've never done this before." Vincent met his eyes in the mirror. "My grandmother died on a hospital sidewalk because the receptionist decided she looked too poor to matter. Wouldn't even call an ambulance. Said they didn't serve people like that. Nonna died alone in the rain, and the last face she saw was someone who'd decided her life had no value." He turned from the mirror, the transformation complete. Where Vincent Moretti had stood, sharp-featured, commanding, dangerous, now stood a 75-year-old man who looked like he'd been sleeping in doorways. "I test people because I need to know who they are when they think no one important is watching. Before I give them my money, before I make them rich, I need to know if they're the kind of person who would have let my grandmother die." Marco was quiet for a long moment. "And if she passes? Then I buy the hotel chain, invest in employee training, and everyone prospers." Vincent shuffled toward the door, practicing the gait of someone much older, much weaker. "If she fails, I destroy everything she's built and acquire the properties for pennies during bankruptcy. Either way, I learn who she really is. And the test? 3 requests, 3 chances to show basic human compassion. A room for the night. I'll have cash, more than enough. If she refuses, I'll ask for help, for dignity, for recognition that I'm human. 3 waves. If she fails all 3, if she crosses the line from caution to cruelty, then I know everything I need to know about her character." The rain had started by the time Vincent's team dropped him 3 blocks from the Grandeur Hotel. He walked slowly, letting the cold seep through the thin coat, feeling water soak into shoes that had holes in the soles. The discomfort was real, deliberate. He needed to embody the vulnerability, to understand what it felt like to be dismissed as less than human. The grandeur rose before him, all marble and gold trim, crystal chandeliers visible through floor-to-ceiling windows. Beautiful, expensive, the kind of place that promised luxury and comfort to those who could afford it. Vincent had stayed in hundreds of hotels like this, always treated like royalty because of the black Amex card in his wallet and the expensive suits that announced his worth. Tonight, he had $300 in crumpled bills and clothes that made people cross the street to avoid him. Tonight, he would learn if the grandeur's luxury extended to basic human decency. He pushed through the revolving doors at 11 p.m., water dripping from his coat onto polished marble floors. The lobby was magnificent. Soaring ceilings, fresh flowers in crystal vases, the subtle scent of expensive perfume and money. 5 guests occupied the space. A businessman in a suit typing on his laptop near the fireplace. A wealthy couple examining a restaurant menu. 2 women in evening wear laughing over cocktails at the bar. And behind, the mahogany reception desk, perfectly coiffed and immaculate in her burgundy blazer, stood Clarissa Vaughn. She glanced up as he entered, and Vincent saw it immediately. The micro-expression that crossed her face before she could control it. Distaste, discomfort, the slight wrinkle of her nose, as if she'd smelled something unpleasant. Her eyes tracked him for exactly 2 seconds before dismissing him as irrelevant, returning to her computer screen. Vincent shuffled forward slowly, his trembling hands gripping the worn wallet that contained $300 bills. The businessman looked up, saw him, and subtly moved his laptop bag closer to his body. The wealthy couple stopped talking, the woman's hand finding her husband's arm. The atmosphere in the lobby shifted from refined elegance to uncomfortable tension, all because a man who looked poor had entered a space reserved for the wealthy. He approached the desk, each step deliberate. Clarissa didn't look up until he was directly in front of her, and when she did, her professional smile was strained, not reaching her eyes. "Can I help you?" The words were correct, but the tone suggested she hoped the answer was no. "Excuse me, miss." Vincent's voice wavered, the accent he'd adopted suggesting working-class roots, decades of hard living. "I'd like a room for the night, please. Just the smallest one you have." He placed the wallet on the counter, opening it to show the cash. "I can pay. See, I have money." Clarissa stared at the crumpled bills as if they might contaminate her desk. Her jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "Sir, I'm sorry, but all our rooms are currently booked for the evening." Vincent glanced at the computer screen, angled just enough that he could see the availability display. 12 vacant rooms, including 3 standard singles. The lie was immediate, reflexive, and completely unnecessary. "The website said you had rooms available," he said, his voice carrying just the right note of confusion and hope. "I checked before coming. It showed vacancies." Clarissa's expression hardened. "Those reservations haven't updated in our system yet. We're completely full." She didn't even glance at the screen, didn't bother to make the lie convincing. "You might try the Comfort Inn on 8th Street. They're more affordable." The word affordable carried weight, an implication. "You don't belong here. This place isn't for people like you. Go somewhere appropriate for your station." Vincent felt the first test point pass. She'd had an opportunity to simply give him a room. He had money, rooms were available. It was literally her job. Instead, she'd chosen to lie, to dismiss, to send him away because his appearance didn't match the grandeur's image. But he'd promised himself 3 chances. 3 opportunities for her to show the compassion his grandmother had been denied. "Please, miss." He let his hands shake more noticeably. Partly performance, partly the genuine cold seeping into his bones. "It's raining and I'm not well. I have the money. I just need somewhere warm to sleep tonight." He pushed the bills closer to her. $300 that would more than cover a standard room. "I won't be any trouble, I promise." Clarissa's eyes flicked to the bills, then to his face, then to the other guests in the lobby. The businessman was watching now, his expression suggesting he agreed with her assessment. The wealthy couple had moved slightly farther away, as if poverty might be contagious. "Sir, even if we had rooms available, you'd need a valid credit card for incidentals." Her tone had shifted from merely cold to actively dismissive. "Do you have a credit card?" She knew he didn't. The question was designed to humiliate, to force him to admit he lacked even that basic marker of financial stability. Vincent felt the sting of it, the deliberate cruelty of asking for something she knew he couldn't provide. "I have cash," he repeated, his voice smaller now, more desperate. $300. That's enough, isn't it? For just one night? Our policy requires a credit card. Clarissa slid the money back across the desk toward him, her fingers barely touching the bills, as if they carried disease. "I'm sorry, but there's nothing I can do. You'll need to find accommodations elsewhere." Second chance given. Second chance refused. But still, not the unforgivable cruelty that would definitively fail the test. She was uncomfortable, dismissive, unnecessarily cruel in her policy enforcement. But Vincent had seen worse. He needed to know if there was any compassion beneath that polished exterior, any recognition that he was a human being deserving of basic dignity. So he tried once more, this time reaching for something deeper, something that should touch any heart that hadn't completely calcified. "My wife died last month." The words came out broken, and Vincent channeled real grief. Not for a fictional wife, but for his grandmother, for the injustice of her death, for every person who'd been dismissed as worthless because they lacked money. "I've been lost, wandering. I just need one night somewhere safe to think, to remember her without the cold and the rain. Please, I'm begging you." The lobby went silent. Even the women at the bar had stopped laughing, sensing the shift in atmosphere. The businessman looked uncomfortable now, as if witnessing something he'd rather not see. The wealthy couple exchanged glances, the woman's face showing something that might have been sympathy. Clarissa had a choice in that moment, a clear, unambiguous opportunity to show basic human compassion. She could give him a room. 12 were vacant. She could bend the policy about credit cards. She had that authority for special circumstances. She could offer coffee, a chair by the fireplace, a phone call to a shelter. She could acknowledge his humanity, his grief, his desperate need for dignity. Instead, her face hardened further, and Vincent saw something in her eyes that made his blood run cold. Not just discomfort or dismissal. Satisfaction. She was enjoying this, enjoying the power of refusing someone who had no power to fight back. "That's very sad, sir." Her voice dripped with false sympathy that bordered on mockery. "But it's not my problem. This is a business, not a charity. We have standards to maintain, and frankly, you're making our other guests uncomfortable." She gestured broadly to the lobby, weaponizing the other guests' discomfort, using their prejudice to justify her own. "I need you to leave now. If you don't go voluntarily, I'll have to call security." Third chance given. Third chance refused. And now, the cruelty escalating. But Vincent needed to be absolutely certain. Needed to see how far she would go, how deep the absence of compassion ran. So he stood his ground, his voice breaking with genuine emotion now, because even though this was a test, even though he knew who he really was, the experience of being dismissed as worthless was viscerally painful. "Please don't do this," he whispered. "I'm not dangerous. I'm not trying to cause trouble. I'm just an old man who needs help. Doesn't that matter at all?" Clarissa's expression shifted from cold to openly hostile. She reached under the desk, and Vincent heard the subtle click of a security alert button. "You had your chance to leave with dignity. Now you're trespassing." Her voice rose, ensuring everyone in the lobby could hear. "This man is refusing to leave after being asked politely multiple times. He's making our guests feel unsafe." Vincent felt the shift in the room. The businessman nodded approvingly, as if Clarissa was handling a dangerous situation. The wealthy couple moved toward the elevators, the husband placing himself protectively between his wife and Vincent. The women at the bar whispered to each other, one pulling out her phone, as if ready to record evidence of the dangerous vagrant. 2 security guards appeared within seconds, large men in crisp uniforms who approached with the casual confidence of people used to removing problems. Vincent saw their faces, not cruel, just doing their jobs, but also not questioning whether this was necessary, just following orders to remove someone who'd been labeled as undesirable. "Sir, you need to come with us." The first guard reached for Vincent's arm, not gently. "I just wanted a room," Vincent said, his voice barely audible. "I have money. I'm not—" "This man is trespassing and harassing our guests." Clarissa cut him off, her voice sharp and carrying. She'd turned this into a performance now, a public display of her authority and his powerlessness. He's been asked to leave multiple times and has refused. He's also—" She paused, her nose wrinkling again. "He's filthy. He probably has lice. He's damaging our reputation just by standing here." There it was, the word from the IE title. Filthy. Not just poor, not just unwelcome, but contaminated. Less than human. Worthy of disgust rather than compassion. Vincent felt the security guards' grips tighten on his arms. They walked him toward the revolving doors, their hold firm, but not yet brutal. Other guests watched, some with relief, others with discomfort they quickly suppressed. No one spoke up. No one questioned whether this was right. They just watched as a desperate old man was forcibly removed for the crime of looking poor. But then, from the service corridor, a voice spoke up. "Wait." It was barely more than a whisper, but in the tense silence of the lobby, it carried. A young woman emerged, wearing the burgundy uniform of a hotel porter. She was perhaps 28, with kind eyes and hands that twisted nervously together. Jade Chen, according to the name tag pinned to her jacket. She carried luggage that she set down carefully before approaching. "Excuse me, sir?" She addressed Vincent directly, seeing him when everyone else had decided he was invisible. "Are you all right? Can I—" She glanced at Clarissa, then back to Vincent, making a choice that Vincent knew could cost her. "Can I get you some water, or maybe—" "Jade," Clarissa's voice cracked like a whip. "Get back to work. This doesn't concern you." "He looks cold," Jade said, her voice stronger now despite the fear Vincent could see in her eyes. "And he's shivering. I just thought—" "I said now, Jade." Clarissa's face had gone red, fury at being questioned, at having her authority challenged in front of guests. "This man is being removed from the property. You will not interfere, or you'll be joining him on the street. Do you understand?" Jade's hands trembled, and Vincent saw the war in her expression. The desire to help battling against the need to keep her job, to not risk everything for a stranger. She was young, probably struggling to make rent, probably couldn't afford to lose her position, but she'd seen someone in need and tried to help anyway. Vincent memorized her face, her name, the compassion that had made her risk something when everyone else had looked away. She'd passed a test she didn't know she was taking, and he would remember. "I understand," Jade said quietly, stepping back. But her eyes met Vincent's, and in them he saw genuine distress, genuine sorrow that she couldn't do more. "I'm sorry," she mouthed silently. The security guards resumed their escort, and Vincent didn't resist. He'd seen everything he needed to see. The test was complete, and Clarissa had failed so spectacularly that there was no ambiguity, no room for interpretation. She'd had 3 clear chances to show compassion, and instead she'd chosen cruelty. Deliberate, public, dehumanizing cruelty. The revolving doors spat him into the rain, which had intensified to a downpour. Water immediately soaked through his thin coat, cold seeping into his bones. Vincent stood on the sidewalk, letting himself feel it. The physical discomfort, the humiliation of being forcibly removed, the sting of being called filthy and treated as contaminated. He understood, in that moment, exactly what his grandmother had felt in her final minutes. The crushing weight of being dismissed as worthless. The profound loneliness of being invisible. Behind him, through the glass windows, he could see Clarissa returning to her desk. She was smiling, actually smiling, as if she'd accomplished something worthy of pride. She said something to the businessman, who nodded and smiled back. The wealthy couple thanked her as they headed to the elevators. She straightened her blazer, made a note in the logbook, and returned to her computer as if nothing significant had happened. She'd thrown a desperate old man into the rain and felt good about it. Vincent shuffled around the corner, out of sight of the hotel's windows, where a black Mercedes with tinted windows idled at the curb. Marco was out of the driver's seat before Vincent reached it, opening the rear door and ushering him inside, where heated seats and thick towels waited. "We got everything," Marco said, as Vincent stripped off the soaked coat, his fingers fumbling with the prosthetics. 3 angles, crystal clear audio, every word, every expression. It's damning, boss. Vincent peeled away the theatrical scars and age spots, revealing his real face, sharp-featured, angular, dangerous, At 52, he looked nothing like the helpless old man who'd been thrown into the rain. The muscle relaxants were wearing off, his hands steadying, and with each piece of the disguise removed, he felt power returning. Not just physical power, but the authority of wealth, of position, of being someone who mattered in the world's eyes. But he'd never forget what it felt like to be someone who didn't. Marco handed him an espresso and a tablet already cued to the footage. Vincent watched in silence, his expression unreadable. The camera captured everything. Clarissa's initial dismissal, the micro-expressions of disgust, the lies about availability, the escalating hostility. Her words played back with perfect clarity. He's filthy. He probably has lice. He's damaging our reputation just by standing here. She smiled. Vincent said quietly, his voice devoid of emotion. After they threw me out, she smiled like she'd won something. She failed, boss, definitively. Run everything on her, background, finances, social media, previous complaints, everything. I want to know if this is who she is, or if this was an anomaly. Vincent replayed Jade's attempted intervention, watching the young porter risk her job to offer basic kindness. And find out everything about Jade Chen. She tried to help. She gets rewarded. Marco was already typing on his phone. The team's on it. We'll have complete profiles within 2 hours. Vincent watched the city lights blur past the window as they drove to his penthouse. The rain continued, and he thought about his grandmother dying in weather like this, alone and dismissed. He thought about Clarissa's smile, about the businessman's approving nod, about the wealthy couple's relief when the problem was removed. He thought about how easy it was for people to decide someone didn't matter based on appearance alone. And he thought about Jade, trembling but determined, seeing a human being when everyone else saw a problem. By 1 a.m., Vincent's team had compiled comprehensive dossiers on both women. He sat in his home office, still damp from the rain, reviewing the information with Marco and his lead investigator, a former FBI analyst named Sarah Chen. Clarissa Vaughn, Sarah began, pulling up files on the large monitor. Age 34, senior receptionist at the Grandeur for 6 years, salary $85,000 plus bonuses, which puts her in the top tier for hotel reception staff. But here's where it gets interesting. She pulled up a series of documents. 3 formal complaints filed against her in the past 4 years. First one from a nursing mother who was asked to leave the lobby because she was making other guests uncomfortable while feeding her infant. Second, from an elderly man with Parkinson's who was told the hotel couldn't accommodate his condition because his tremors were disturbing. Third, from a disabled veteran in a wheelchair who was told all accessible rooms were booked. They weren't, because his service dog violated pet policies. How were the complaints resolved? Vincent asked, his voice cold. Dismissed by management every time. Clarissa claimed she was following policy, protecting other guests, maintaining standards. Management backed her up, probably because she's efficient and the hotel makes money. Sarah pulled up more files. But there's more. 2 Yelp reviews specifically mention her by name. Both describe her as dismissive and rude to anyone who doesn't look wealthy. And her Instagram is enlightening. The screen filled with Clarissa's social media posts. Photos of her at expensive restaurants, designer shopping bags, luxury vacations. But the captions were what made Vincent's jaw tighten. Brunch at La Bernardin, because I deserve to be around quality people, not the usual riffraff. Nothing ruins a spa day like having to share space with people who clearly can't afford to be there. The difference between class and trash is knowing where you belong. Some people need to learn their place. She's a pattern, Vincent said flatly. This isn't one bad night. This is who she is. Gets worse, Sarah continued. Financial profile shows she's living beyond her means. Rents a $3,200 a month apartment in Tribeca, leases a BMW she can barely afford, carries $40,000 in credit card debt. She's one financial emergency away from collapse, but she presents herself as wealthy and looks down on anyone who appears to have less. Insecure, Marco observed. Compensating. Doesn't matter why, Vincent said. Matters what she does. She's cruel to vulnerable people because it makes her feel powerful, because she can. That's enough. He closed the file. What about Jade Chen? Sarah's expression softened. Complete opposite. Age 28. Porter at the Grandeur for 2 years. earns $32,000 annually, which in New York means she's barely surviving. Works a second job at a coffee shop 4 mornings a week. Sends money every month to her mother in San Francisco, who has multiple sclerosis. She pulled up Jade's employee records. Perfect attendance, 3 commendations from guests for going above and beyond. Helped a lost child find her parents. Stayed 2 hours past her shift to help an elderly couple with mobility issues get settled. Personally delivered forgotten medication to a guest's room on her day off. She's studying hospitality management online, trying to work her way up. She risked her job tonight, Vincent said, for a stranger she thought was homeless. She's good people, boss. Struggling, but good. Vincent was quiet for a long moment, thinking about the contrast between the two women. Clarissa, with her comfortable salary and cruel heart. Jade, barely making rent, but still finding compassion for others. The universe wasn't fair. The cruel often prospered, while the kind struggled. But Vincent had the power to correct that imbalance, at least in this small corner of the world. Here's what we're going to do, he said, his voice carrying the absolute certainty of someone used to being obeyed. Jade gets $100,000 cash, delivered tomorrow. Full scholarship to Cornell's hospitality program. They have the best in the country. And a job offer at my flagship property when she graduates. Starting salary $75,000 with full benefits. Make it happen. Done, Sarah said, already typing. As for Clarissa, Vincent's expression went cold. I want to own every aspect of her professional life by end of business tomorrow. Can we do that? Marco smiled grimly. Already started, the Grandeur chain has $89 million in outstanding debt held by 3 banks. All 3 banks are nervous about the loans. Occupancy has been good, but the luxury market is volatile. They'd be happy to offload the debt at a discount. Buy it, all of it. The flagship property where Clarissa works is on a lease. The landlord is an investment group that's been trying to liquidate some holdings. They'd sell for the right price. Buy the building. The Grandeur chain is managed by a company called Luxury Hospitality Group. They're publicly traded, and their stock has been underperforming. A hostile takeover would be expensive but achievable. Buy controlling interest. I want to own the debt, the property, and the management company. I want every point of leverage on Clarissa Vaughn's employment. By tomorrow evening, I want her to have nowhere to run. Sarah looked up from her tablet. That's going to cost approximately $120 million, even with the discounts. Do it. Vincent stood, walking to the window overlooking the city. Somewhere out there, Clarissa Vaughn was sleeping peacefully, believing she'd successfully protected her hotel from an undesirable vagrant. She had no idea her world was about to end. And contact the Luxury Hotel Association. I want them aware of her pattern of discriminatory behavior. She's not just losing this job, she's being blacklisted from the industry. Boss, Marco said carefully. This is going to destroy her, completely, no recovery. Good. Vincent's reflection in the window was merciless. She destroyed my grandmother. She destroys people like Jade every day, people who are kind and struggling and just trying to survive. She does it because she can, because she enjoys the power of crushing people who can't fight back. Well, now she's going to learn what it feels like to be powerless, to be crushed by someone who has the power to do it. Maybe she'll develop some compassion, but more likely, she'll just serve as a warning to others. When do you want to do the reveal? Tomorrow, 7 p.m., peak check-in time, maximum witnesses. I want Jade there to see her reward. I want Clarissa's co-workers there to learn the lesson. I want it public, witnessed, and recorded. This doesn't just end her career. It sends a message to everyone in that industry that character matters, that how you treat the powerless will eventually determine your fate. By 3 a.m., Vincent's legal team was mobilizing. By 6 a.m., they'd opened negotiations with the banks holding the Grandeur's debt. By 9 a.m., they'd made an offer on the building. By noon, they'd begun acquiring shares in Luxury Hospitality Group. By 2 p.m., they'd secured controlling interest in the management company. By 5 p.m., Vincent Moretti owned or controlled every aspect of Clarissa Vaughn's employment, and she had no idea her world had changed. At 6:30 p.m., Vincent stood in his penthouse, preparing for the reveal. This time, instead of theatrical makeup and thrift store clothes, he wore an $8,000 Tom Ford suit, a Patek Philippe watch that cost more than Clarissa made in a year, and Italian leather shoes that announced wealth with every step. His hair was perfectly styled, his presence commanding. He looked like exactly what he was, a man with the power to change lives with a word. Marco and 3 security personnel would accompany him, all imposing, all silent. The message would be clear before Vincent even spoke. Power had entered the building, and someone's reckoning had arrived. "The media?" Vincent asked as they rode the elevator down to the garage. "Tipped off anonymously about a major announcement at the Grandeur at 7:15. They'll have cameras there by 7:30. Marco checked his phone. "Jade's been contacted. She thinks she's being called in for a disciplinary meeting because of last night. She's terrified." "Good, the relief will be sweeter." Vincent's expression was unreadable. "And Clarissa?" "No idea what's coming. She logged a note in the system last night about successfully removing a vagrant who was harassing guests. She's proud of what she did." The Mercedes pulled up to the Grandeur Hotel at exactly 7 p.m. The lobby was crowded with weekend guests checking in. Business travelers, tourists, couples dressed for dinner. The crystal chandeliers sparkled. The marble floors gleamed, and everything looked exactly as it had the night before. Beautiful, expensive, exclusive. Vincent stepped through the revolving doors, and the atmosphere shifted immediately. Guests sensed something, the way prey animals sense a predator. Conversations faltered. People stepped aside instinctively, making way. Marco and the security team followed, their presence intimidating without being overtly threatening. Clarissa stood at the reception desk, helping a couple with their check-in. She glanced up at the commotion, her professional smile already forming. She saw an obviously wealthy man approaching. Expensive suit, commanding presence, the kind of guest who expected and received the best service. Her smile widened, her posture straightening. She didn't recognize him, not yet. "Good evening, sir." Her voice was warm, obsequious, everything it hadn't been the night before. "Welcome to the Grandeur. How may I assist you this evening?" Vincent stopped at the desk, his expression neutral. Marco positioned himself slightly behind and to the left, the security team fanning out to block the exits. Not obviously, but anyone watching would sense they were trapped in whatever was about to happen. "I was here last night, actually," Vincent said, his voice quiet, but carrying in the suddenly silent lobby. Clarissa's smile faltered slightly. Something in his voice was familiar, but she couldn't place it. "I'm sorry, I don't recall. Do you have a reservation with us?" Marco stepped forward and placed a tablet on the desk. The screen showed security footage from the night before. Vincent in his disguise, approaching this same desk. Clarissa on screen, her face showing disgust. The audio began playing. "He's filthy. He probably has lice. He's damaging our reputation just by standing here." Clarissa's face drained of color. Her eyes darted between the screen and Vincent's face, recognition crashing over her like a physical blow. That was me." Vincent's voice was cold, controlled, utterly without mercy. "The disgusting old man you had thrown into the rain." Clarissa's mouth opened and closed, no sound emerging. Her hands gripped the edge of the desk, as if it was the only thing keeping her upright. Other guests were pulling out their phones now, sensing drama, recording what was about to unfold. "Oh my God!" The words finally, came out as a whisper. I couldn't have known." "Exactly." Vincent leaned forward slightly, his voice quiet, but every word landing like a hammer blow. "You didn't know I mattered. You didn't know I was watching. You didn't know I had power. So you treated me like garbage. You called me filthy. You had me forcibly removed for the crime of requesting a room I could pay for. And then you smiled about it." "Sir, please, I can explain. I was testing you." Vincent cut her off, his voice rising now, ensuring everyone in the lobby could hear. "Testing whether this hotel treats all guests with dignity, or only those who look wealthy. Testing whether you had basic human compassion, or whether you measured people's worth by their appearance. Testing whether I wanted to invest $340 million in a company that employs people like you." Clarissa's legs buckled slightly. She grabbed the desk harder, her face cycling through emotions. Shock, horror, denial, desperate calculation. "If I had known it was you, if you had known I was wealthy, you would have been kind." Vincent's voice was sharp now, cutting. "That's exactly the problem, Clarissa. Compassion shouldn't depend on someone's bank account. You treated me like garbage because you thought I was powerless, because you thought no one important was watching, because you could. That reveals who you are. The lobby was completely silent now, except for Vincent's voice. Guests watched with rapt attention, some with their phones raised, recording. Staff members had emerged from back offices, sensing something significant was happening. Vincent saw Jade standing near the service corridor, her face pale, her eyes wide with shock and dawning understanding. I didn't mean. Clarissa tried again, her voice breaking. You did mean it. Vincent's voice was implacable. You meant every word, every dismissive look, every cruel decision. You had 3 chances to show compassion last night, 3 opportunities to see a human being instead of a problem. Let me remind you exactly what happened. He gestured to Marco, who began playing the footage in sequence. Vincent's first request, polite and reasonable. Clarissa's immediate lie about availability. The second request, more desperate, her escalating hostility. The third request, heartbreaking in its vulnerability, her calling security. First chance, Vincent narrated. I asked for a room, I had money. You lied and said you were fully booked. You weren't. You just didn't want me there. I was following policy. Show me the policy that says refuse paying customers who smell bad. I'll wait. Clarissa couldn't. There is no such policy. You made a choice. A choice to lie. A choice to dismiss. That was chance 1, and you failed it. The footage continued. Vincent's second request, his increased desperation. Clarissa's demand for a credit card she knew he didn't have. Second chance, I explained I was unwell, that I just needed warmth. You created an impossible requirement, a credit card, knowing I didn't have one. You could have made an exception. You have that authority for special circumstances. But you chose to use policy as a weapon, to humiliate me by making me admit I lacked something you knew I lacked. That was chance 2, and you failed it. Clarissa was crying now, mascara running down her face, but Vincent felt no sympathy. She'd smiled when he was thrown into the rain. She'd enjoyed his humiliation. Now she would experience her own. Third chance. The footage showed Vincent's final plea, his story about his dead wife, his desperate need for dignity. I told you I'd lost someone, that I was grieving, that I just needed one night of safety. You called me filthy. You said I was damaging your reputation. You had security throw me into the rain. He paused, letting the words sink in. That was chance 3. You didn't just fail it. You revealed exactly who you are. I was protecting the hotel. From what? Vincent's voice cracked like a whip. From a man asking for shelter? From basic human need? You weren't protecting anything. You were exercising power over someone you thought couldn't fight back. You were enjoying it. I saw your face, Clarissa. You smiled after they threw me out. You felt good about what you'd done. How was I supposed to know? Clarissa's voice rose, desperate now, grasping for any defense. You looked like, you were dressed like, I thought you were actually homeless. And if I was? Vincent's question hung in the air. If I really was a homeless man, desperate and cold, would that make your cruelty acceptable? Would it justify calling me filthy and throwing me into the rain? Does being homeless mean you're not human, not worthy of basic dignity? Clarissa had no answer. The question exposed the rot at the core of her actions. She'd treated him badly because she'd decided he didn't matter, and that decision was based entirely on his appearance. There was no justification, no policy, no legitimate concern, just prejudice and cruelty. You looked poor, Vincent continued, his voice quieter now, but no less cutting. That's not the same as dangerous. You confused poverty with threat because it made your cruelty easier to justify. You decided someone's worth based on their clothes, their smell, their apparent station in life. That's not caution. That's not protection. That's discrimination. That's inhumanity. I've had bad experiences before. Clarissa tried a new defense, her voice cracking. Homeless people have caused problems, and I was just... So you punish everyone who reminds you of those experiences? Vincent's voice was sharp. You make every struggling person pay for someone else's actions? That's not learning from experience. That's bigotry. You created a category, poor people, homeless people, desperate people, and you decided they were all less than human. All unworthy. All deserving of cruelty. You didn't see me as an individual. You saw a category you'd decided to hate. Clarissa was sobbing openly now, her carefully maintained composure shattered. Anyone would have done the same thing. It's not fair to judge me for… No. The single word stopped her cold. Vincent turned and gestured toward Jade, who stood frozen near the service corridor. Jade didn't do the same thing. Jade, please come here. Jade approached slowly, her face showing confusion and fear. She thought she was in trouble, that she was about to be fired for her attempted kindness the night before. Vincent saw her trembling and felt a surge of fury at a system that made compassion risky. Tell everyone what you did last night, Vincent said gently. Jade's voice was barely audible. I tried to give you water. I saw you were cold and shaking, and I thought you needed help. You tried to help, despite your supervisor's direct order not to. Vincent's voice carried to every corner of the lobby. Despite knowing it could cost you your job, despite being afraid, you saw a human being who needed help, and you tried to help. That's not what anyone would do, Clarissa. That's what good people do. That's what compassionate people do. Jade passed a test she didn't know she was taking. She proved that kindness still exists, that some people still see humanity in others, regardless of appearance or station. He turned back to Clarissa, whose face had gone from red to ashen. You failed that test, spectacularly, and you want to know the worst part? This isn't the first time. Marco pulled up more files on the tablet. The formal complaints, the Yelp reviews, the Instagram posts. Vincent read them aloud, each one a damning indictment of Clarissa's pattern of behavior. The nursing mother you asked to leave, the elderly man with Parkinson's you refused, the disabled veteran you turned away, the social media posts mocking riffraff and trash. This isn't one bad night, Clarissa. This is who you are, a pattern of cruelty toward anyone you perceive as lesser. Anyone who doesn't meet your standards of worthiness. Please. Clarissa's voice was broken, desperate. I made mistakes. I'm sorry. I'll do better. Just give me another chance. I gave you 3 chances. Vincent's voice was final, absolute. Last night, 3 separate opportunities to show compassion. You chose cruelty every single time. Why would I give you a 4th chance? Why would anyone trust you to change when you've shown repeatedly that this is your character? I need this job. I have rent, car payments. I'll lose everything. Yes. The single word was merciless. You will. And maybe, when you're struggling, when you're desperate, when you're standing in the rain begging for help, maybe then you'll understand what you did to others. Maybe you'll develop the compassion you should have had all along. But I doubt it. People like, you rarely learn. You'll just blame everyone else for your consequences. Vincent signaled to Marco, who handed Clarissa a folder. Her hands shook as she opened it, her eyes scanning the documents inside. With each page, her face went paler, her breathing more rapid. Effective immediately. You're terminated for cause, Vincent said, his voice carrying the weight of absolute authority. Your actions last night violated company anti-discrimination policies, policies that apparently weren't enforced until now. That changes today. As of 2 p.m. this afternoon, I own the debt on this hotel chain. I own the building this hotel occupies, and I own controlling interest in the management company that employs you. You work for me now, or rather, you worked for me, past tense. Clarissa's knees buckled. She grabbed the desk, barely staying upright. You can't do this. It's not legal. I'll sue. Try it. Vincent's smile was cold. I have footage of your discriminatory behavior. I have witnesses. I have a pattern of complaints that were ignored by previous management. I have your own social media posts proving your prejudice. My lawyers will bury you so deep you'll never see daylight. And even if by some miracle you won, the legal fees would bankrupt you long before you saw a settlement. He gestured to the security team. You have 10 minutes to clear out your locker. Take only personal items. Everything else belongs to the hotel. Security will escort you off the property, and if you attempt to return, you'll be arrested for trespassing. Please. Clarissa was openly sobbing now, her carefully constructed life collapsing in real time. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I didn't know. I didn't understand. Please, I'll do anything. You're sorry you got caught. Vincent's voice was quiet but cutting. You're sorry you're facing consequences, but you're not sorry for what you did. If I'd really been a homeless old man with no power, you'd still be proud of throwing me out. You'd still be sleeping peacefully tonight, believing you'd protected your hotel from undesirables. The only thing that's changed is that you learned I have power, that I can hurt you the way you hurt others. That's not remorse, that's fear. He turned to address the entire lobby, his voice carrying to every guest, every staff member, everyone watching this unfold. Let me tell you what I learned in 52 years of life. Wealth doesn't make you better. Power doesn't make you superior. These things make you more visible, that's all. They're a spotlight. And what that spotlight reveals, what I saw in Clarissa when she thought no one important was watching, was ugliness, cruelty, a complete absence of basic human compassion. The lobby was silent, except for his voice. Every person listening, absorbing the lesson. I've done terrible things in my life, built my empire on decisions I'm not proud of, hurt people who threatened what was mine, crushed competitors without mercy. I'm not a good man by most definitions, but I've never forgotten what it's like to be powerless, to be invisible, to beg for basic dignity and be denied. His voice grew harder, more passionate. My grandmother died on a hospital sidewalk because a receptionist decided she looked too poor to matter. Wouldn't call an ambulance, wouldn't get help, just let her die in the rain because she'd decided my grandmother's life had no value. That's why I test people. That's why I put myself through the discomfort of disguise, the humiliation of being dismissed, the pain of being treated as less than human. Because I need to know who people really are before I give them my money, my trust, my power. He looked directly at Clarissa. And what you revealed last night was someone who measures human worth by appearance, by wealth, by whether someone can help or hurt you. That's not business sense. That's moral bankruptcy. That's the kind of character that let my grandmother die. That's the kind of cruelty I will never tolerate, never reward, never allow to prosper if I have the power to stop it. Vincent's voice dropped, becoming quieter, but somehow more intense. How you treat people who can't benefit you, who can't fight back, who have no power to hurt or help you, that reveals your true character. Clarissa revealed hers. She had every opportunity to show compassion. She chose cruelty instead. And now she'll face what that choice costs. He turned back to Clarissa, who was being supported by the security guards, barely able to stand. You're blacklisted from every property I own or acquire. I've contacted the Luxury Hotel Association about your pattern of discriminatory behavior. I've ensured that every hospitality company in this city knows exactly why you were terminated. You'll find employment in this industry difficult, perhaps impossible. You're destroying my life over one mistake. Clarissa's voice was shrill with desperation. It wasn't one mistake. Vincent's voice was final. It was a pattern of behavior, a consistent choice to be cruel, a fundamental absence of human decency. You destroyed your own life, Clarissa. You just didn't know it until the consequences arrived. Now you know. Now everyone knows. You'll serve as a warning. Treat people with dignity, or face the consequences when someone with power is watching. Security began escorting Clarissa away. She was sobbing, barely coherent, her world ending in front of dozens of witnesses and multiple cameras. Other staff members watched with expressions ranging from shock to grim satisfaction. Some had clearly witnessed her cruelty before, had perhaps been victims of it themselves. As Clarissa was led toward the back offices to clear her locker, Vincent turned to Jade, who stood trembling, tears streaming down her face. Not from fear now, but from overwhelming emotion at witnessing justice delivered. Jade Chen, Vincent said, his voice gentle now, the hardness, reserved for Clarissa, melting away. Come here, please. Jade approached slowly, as if afraid this might be a trick, that she might still be in trouble. Vincent smiled, the first genuine smile he'd shown since entering the building. Last night, you tried to help someone you thought was homeless and desperate. You offered water. You showed concern. You risked your job to show basic human kindness. Do you remember? Yes, sir. Jade's voice was barely audible. That was me, the old man you tried to help, and you passed a test you didn't know you were taking. Vincent pulled out a folder, different from the one he'd given Clarissa. This is your reward for being a good person in a situation where being good was risky." Jade opened the folder with shaking hands. Her eyes widened as she read, disbelief spreading across her face. This can't be real. $100,000 cash, delivered tomorrow. Full scholarship to Cornell's School of Hotel Administration, the best hospitality program in the country. And a job offer at my flagship property when you graduate. Starting salary $75,000 with full benefits, and a clear path to management. Vincent watched her face, saw the moment the reality hit her. You tried to help when it cost you something to help, when it was risky, when it would have been easier to look away. That matters. That's worth rewarding. Jade collapsed into tears, her whole body shaking. I couldn't stand watching. He looked so cold and alone, and I just thought, someone should help. Anyone would have— No, Vincent interrupted gently. Not anyone. Most people looked away. Most people agreed with Clarissa. Most people decided I wasn't worth the risk of helping. You didn't. You saw a human being who needed help, and you tried to help despite the cost. That's not what anyone would do. That's what good people do. That's what compassionate people do. And I see it. I value it. I reward it. He addressed the crowd again. This is the other side of judgment. Cruelty gets consequences, but compassion gets rewarded. Kindness is never wasted. Good character matters. And those who show it, those who risk something to help others, they're the ones who deserve success. They're the ones I want to work with. They're the ones who make the world better. The lobby erupted in applause. Guests who'd been recording were crying, moved by the contrast between Clarissa's destruction and Jade's elevation. Staff members were hugging Jade, congratulating her, some crying themselves at seeing genuine goodness rewarded in a world that so often seemed to punish it. Vincent stepped back, letting Jade have her moment. Marco approached, speaking quietly. The media's outside. They want a statement. Tell them the Grandeur Hotel chain is under new ownership as of today. Tell them we're implementing comprehensive anti-discrimination training for all staff. Tell them character matters, compassion matters, and this company will reflect those values going forward. Anyone who can't meet that standard will find employment elsewhere. And Clarissa, let her go. Let her try to rebuild. She won't be able to. The story will follow her. The blacklisting will hold. But let her try. Maybe in her struggle she'll learn something. Probably not. But either way, she serves her purpose. She's a warning. She's proof that cruelty has consequences. That someone's always watching. That character determines destiny. Marco nodded and stepped away to handle the press. Vincent watched Jade being congratulated by her coworkers, saw her clutching the folder as if it might disappear, saw the hope and disbelief and overwhelming gratitude on her face. This was why he tested. Not for the destruction, though Clarissa's fall was satisfying, but for this, for finding good people and giving them opportunities, for rewarding compassion in a world that too often ignored it. Over the next 2 weeks, the story spread like wildfire. Guests who'd recorded the confrontation posted videos online. The footage went viral, trending on every platform. News outlets picked it up. Billionaire goes undercover, exposes hotel discrimination. Think pieces were written about character testing, about how people treat service workers, about the hidden cruelty of class prejudice. The Grandeur Hotel chain's stock initially dropped as the discrimination story broke, then surged when Vincent announced his acquisition and reform plans. Other luxury hotels panicked, hastily implementing new training programs, reviewing their own policies for discriminatory language, ensuring their staff understood that every guest deserved dignity regardless of appearance. The Hospitality Industry Association created new standards for inclusive service. Insurance companies offered discounts to hotels that could demonstrate comprehensive anti-discrimination training. The phrase, "you never know who's watching," became a warning shared among service industry workers. Treat everyone well, because that difficult customer might be someone with the power to change your life. Clarissa's attempts to control the narrative failed spectacularly. She tried posting on social media, claiming she'd been set up by a cruel billionaire playing games with people's lives. The response was brutal. Comments flooded in from people who'd experienced her cruelty firsthand. The nursing mother she'd banned, the elderly man she'd mocked, the disabled veteran she'd refused. Her previous Instagram posts resurfaced. The ones mocking riffraff and trash, destroying any claim to victimhood. She tried to paint the test itself as unfair, as entrapment. But people pointed out that she'd had 3 chances to show basic human decency, that the request, a room for a paying customer, wasn't unreasonable, that her cruelty was a choice, not a forced response, that if she'd simply been kind, she'd still have her job and her comfortable life. She applied to other luxury hotels. All rejected her. The viral video had made her unemployable in high-end hospitality. She tried mid-range chains. Word had spread. She tried restaurants, retail, any service industry job. Her name triggered instant recognition, instant rejection. Within 2 weeks, she was working at a discount clothing store for $15 an hour, living with her parents after losing her apartment, her BMW repossessed, her credit cards maxed out. The test had revealed her character. The consequences were revealing what it felt like to be powerless, dismissed, struggling. Whether she learned anything from the experience remained to be seen. But she served her purpose. A cautionary tale that warned others about the cost of cruelty. Jade Chen thrived. She gave notice at both her jobs, the hotel and the coffee shop, and enrolled full-time at Cornell. The scholarship covered everything, and the $100,000 allowed her to bring her mother to New York for better medical treatment. She studied with fierce dedication, knowing she'd been given a chance most people never got. She graduated top of her class 2 years later and accepted Vincent's job offer. At 30, she became assistant manager of his flagship property, implementing programs she'd designed herself, vouchers for free rooms during extreme weather for homeless guests, partnerships with local shelters, staff training focused on seeing people rather than categories. She paid her kindness forward daily, proving that goodness multiplied when given the chance. When interviewed about the viral video, she always said the same thing. "I just saw someone who needed help. That's what we're supposed to do, see people, not categories. I was lucky that someone saw me too, that someone valued compassion. But I would have helped anyway. That's not about reward, that's about being human." Vincent watched from a distance as both women's lives unfolded along the paths their characters had determined. Clarissa struggling, bitter, unable to recover from consequences she'd brought on herself. Jade flourishing, grateful, using her success to help others. The contrast was stark, deliberate, and exactly the message he'd intended to send. 6 months after the grandeur test, Vincent stood in a different bathroom, in a different city, applying different makeup. This time, he was transforming into a disabled veteran. Prosthetic scars suggesting burns, a wheelchair, trembling hands from PTSD, a shabby military jacket with medals that were real, earned by a friend who died in Vincent's arms in Afghanistan. Marco watched from the doorway, the same concern on his face. Chicago this time? Chicago. Vincent studied his reflection, the transformation nearly complete. High-end restaurant, Michelin-starred. I'm considering investing in their expansion. Want to see if they serve everyone with dignity, or just people who look like they belong in places like that. You're going to keep doing this. It wasn't a question. Until I die. Vincent's voice was certain. Someone has to. Someone has to remind people that character matters, that how you treat the powerless reveals who you really are, that compassion isn't weakness. It's the only thing that separates humans from monsters. He wheeled himself toward the door, feeling the vulnerability of the chair, the way it changed how people would see him. I've been powerful for a long time, but I remember what it was like to be powerless, to be invisible, to have people decide you don't matter. I'll never forget that feeling, and I'll never stop testing people to see if they've forgotten it too. And when they fail, they learn. One way or another, they all learn. The hard way usually, but they learn. The restaurant was called Oriole, and it was everything Vincent had researched. Elegant, expensive, exclusive. He wheeled himself up to the host stand at 7 p.m. on a Friday night, the busiest time, when the dining room was full of Chicago's elite enjoying $200 tasting menus. The host was young, polished, professionally distant. She looked at Vincent in his wheelchair, at his shabby jacket, at the visible scars on his face. And he saw it again, that micro-expression of discomfort, of wishing he hadn't come. "Good evening," Vincent said, his voice carrying the slight tremor of trauma. the accent suggesting working-class roots. "I'd like a table for one, please." The host's smile was strained. "Do you have a reservation, sir?" "No, but I was hoping you might have something available. I wanted to treat myself. Haven't been out in a while." The host glanced at the dining room, at the well-dressed patrons, at the atmosphere of refined elegance. She looked back at Vincent, and he saw the calculation happening behind her eyes, saw her deciding whether he belonged, whether he would fit, whether he was worth the risk of disrupting the carefully cultivated ambiance. "I'm sorry, sir, but we're fully booked this evening. Perhaps if you called ahead." In a sedan parked across the street, Vincent's team watched through hidden cameras. The test had begun. The host had her first chance to show compassion, to see a human being who wanted dignity and a good meal. She'd just failed. Vincent prepared for the second wave, knowing from experience that most people failed all 3 chances, knowing that cruelty was more common than compassion, knowing that he'd probably destroy another life before the night was over, but hoping, always hoping, that someone would pass, that someone would prove compassion still existed, that someone would see a human being instead of a problem. A young waitress emerged from the kitchen, saw Vincent, saw the host's discomfort, and started walking toward them with a menu and a kind expression on her face. Vincent felt a spark of hope. The test continued, because it always continued, because someone had to watch, someone had to test, someone had to remind the world that character mattered, that compassion mattered, that how you treated the powerless revealed everything about who you really were. And Vincent Moretti, who'd been powerless once, who'd stood in the rain outside a restaurant in Naples at 17, and been saved by a woman who'd seen his humanity, would keep testing until his last breath. Because his grandmother had died on a sidewalk, dismissed as worthless. Because Jade had risked her job to offer water to a stranger. Because Clarissa had smiled when she threw him into the rain. Because the world needed to know that someone was watching, always watching, testing character, delivering consequences, rewarding compassion, because you never knew who was watching. And that uncertainty, that possibility that any interaction might be a test, that any vulnerable person might be someone with power in disguise. That was the point. Treat everyone with dignity. See people, not categories. Show compassion, not because it benefits you, but because it's right. Because character always matters. Because someone is always watching. And because, eventually, everyone faces the consequences of who they choose to be. Clarissa had learned that lesson too late. Jade had learned it just in time. And somewhere in Chicago, another test was unfolding. Another person was choosing between compassion and cruelty. Another life hung in the balance of a simple decision to see someone's humanity or dismiss it. The cycle continued. It would always continue. Until the world learned. Or until Vincent Moretti took his last breath testing it. Whichever came first. Have you ever been judged by your appearance? Have you witnessed someone being treated differently because of how they looked? Drop your story in the comments below. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button for more tales of karma, consequences, and the power of compassion. Remember, you never know who's watching. Treat everyone with dignity because character always matters. And everyone eventually faces the consequences of their choices.